out to talk with Jacob. Meanwhile, Jacob's sons had come into the field as soon as they heard what had happened. So they was over listening. Meanwhile, they were shocked and they were furious because Shechem had done an outrageous thing in Israel by sleeping with Jacob's daughter, a thing that should not be done. I'm sitting here thinking, was the concern for Dinah or just you don't do that in the kingdoms? Because I almost feel like they're protecting their sister, and then I think, or is it they're protecting their father? Either way, they're trying to be, to the tradition and customs of that day, respectful, and they feel like they've been disrespected, and this is not just any disrespect. Y'all, back then when they were still drawing bloodlines, you didn't cross those lines. So, in verse 8 in chapter 34, but Hamor said to them, my son Shechem has his heart, he's in love with her, y'all, set on your daughter. Please give her to him as a wife. Intermarry with us, give us your daughters, and take our daughters for yourselves. You can settle among us. The land is open to you. Live in it, trade in it, and acquire property in it. Y'all, as a woman, it's hard to read this stuff and go, we're not property. Then they were. And if some of you want to say, well, why? That's not right. It really wasn't right that Eve totally betrayed God with Adam either. You can't forget that, y'all. You can't. It doesn't mean that women are more to blame, because Adam was just as much to blame. If you remember, it says, and he was right there. So it's not like he... But the love between a man and a woman is so great that he would listen more to that than the voice of God. That's the boo-boo. Big, big mistake. And womankind paid heavily for that, her part in that. So did man. Don't ever forget that. Every time that you have to work for a living and get a paycheck, you didn't ever originally have to. Now it's toil. Back then it was just work, enjoyable work. That's why if you actually enjoy your work, consider that a blessing. I do. I'm very blessed that way. But would I just as much like to be able to do other things and instead of work, do other things with my life? Sure. But you got to pay the bills. So that's what we were brought to. So as you see this, sometimes these things are hard to understand, hard to read. I'm not even sure I'm saying it right. I mean, clearly here, Dinah was an innocent victim. Okay? There's no doubt about that. So let's just keep going. So Jacob hears that his daughter has been defiled, and he talks about it, and the brothers hear it, and they said this should not have happened. And then Hamor says, my son Shechem, just to keep in order who these people are, he has his heart set on your daughter. Let's work it out between them. But, let's let them have each other, and let's all become family, and you can live in my land and all that kind of stuff. Then Shechem said to Dinah's father and brothers, let me find favor in your eyes, and I will give you whatever you ask. Make the price of the bride and the gift, and I'm willing to bring you whatever you want, whatever you say. I'll pay whatever you ask me. Only give me the young woman as my wife. Who's that? That's Shechem himself then coming to Dinah's father. So first of all, Shechem's dad comes and says he really loves your daughter. We will be family. So come in here. You can have the land. You can have women and children. All the things you want. All the things that are valuable in life. You can have it. Just let our son and daughter be happy together. And then Shechem himself comes to Dinah's father and says, whatever you ask, I'll do it. I just need her. I love her. I want her so bad. I'll do whatever you say. Whatever you say. Name it. Whatever price, whatever action. I'll do whatever it takes to get her. Only please give her to me. Because back then the father had the power to give the daughter. Because the sister Dinah had been defiled, Jacob's son replied deceitfully as they spoke to Shechem and to his father. They said, we can't do such a thing. We can't give our sister to a man who is not circumcised. What? They're up to something. That would be a disgrace to us. And so, if you want her so bad, all your males have to be circumcised. I'm skipping way down. And their proposal seemed good to Hamor and his son Shechem, I guess they're thinking it isn't that bad, right? I mean, so we get circumcised and then we get her, and we can all live happily ever after. We'll all intermix and marry, and it'll be wonderful. And so Hamor and his son Shechem went to the gate of the city to speak to the men of the city. These men are friendly towards us. Lie. And they said, let them live in our land and trade in it, and the land will be plenty of room for them, and we can marry their daughters, and they can marry ours, but the men will agree only if we're all circumcised. Not just me, but everybody. Every male has to be circumcised. And their livestock, their property, their animals, everything will be ours as long as we agree to their terms, and we're willing to do it. We think it's a good deal. And so all the men went out of the city gate and agreed with Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male in the city was circumcised. 3 days later, while all of them were still in pain, weak, surgery, hurting, 2 of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and attacked every unsuspecting male in the city and killed them. They were too weak to fight back. That was Simeon. I said Simon, sorry. It's Simeon and Levi. Do you remember who were the sons of Levi? Priests. They put Hamor and his son Shechem to the sword and took Dinah from Shechem's house and left, and the sons of Jacob came upon the dead bodies and looted the city wherever their sister had been defiled. They seized the flocks and the herds and everything else. They carried off all their wealth and all their women and all their children and took everything as a plunder. Things and people. Plunder. Are you getting the feeling that this isn't right? Nobody said it's right. It's just the truth. The story's the truth, so you're getting all of it. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, you have brought trouble on me by making me obnoxious to the Canaanites and the Pezerites and the people living in the land, and we are few in number, and if they join forces against me and attack, I and my household will be destroyed. But they replied, should we have treated our sister like a prostitute? It was a dishonoring thing to her. It was a dishonoring thing to the family and to their bloodline. And yet Jacob is saying, y'all screwed up in the way that you did this, and we are going to be killed. Jacob returns to Bethel. So God says to Jacob, go up to Bethel and settle there and build an altar to God who appeared to you when you were fleeing from your brother Esau. Remember those times? So Jacob said to his household and to all who are with him, get rid of all your foreign gods that you have with them, purify yourselves, change your clothes, and we are going to, it says in verse 4, so they gave Jacob all their foreign gods that they had and the rings in their ears, their earrings, and Jacob buried them under the oak Shechem. At Shechem. Remember, Shechem's a person, is also a land. Then they set out, and the terror of God fell on the towns around them so that no one pursued them. So God, once again, helps them on their behalf because they got rid of all the gods. The little gods. Little statue things. Jacob and all his people with him came to Luz. Remember, that's another name for Bethel. In the land of Canaan. Remember Canaan? That's not the good place for where you want to get daughters from. Get married people from. In other words, the Canaanites, remember how Esau said, I'm going to marry me a Canaanite, a Hittite? That's because they were from the Ishmael side of the family. That's the wrong bloodline. They're supposed to keep this bloodline straight to the covenant. Now Deborah, in verse 8, Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died and was buried under the oak outside Bethel, so that it was named Alan Bakuth, which that means oak of weeping. After Jacob returned from Padam Haram, and I'm sitting here thinking, wait a minute, did we already read this? Okay, now what are we getting? It's an account of an account or a recount. So now you're starting to get details of a story, yes, that you already heard. God said, your name is Jacob, but you will no longer be called Jacob. Your name will be Israel. So he named him Israel. Didn't we just hear that? Yes, you did. You heard that many pages ago when you see Jacob wrestling with God. And if you remember, he asked him what his name is, and he says his name is Jacob, and he says, no, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel. And then Jacob says, please tell me your name. And he says, why do you ask me my name? But when you get over here and you're reading what he has to say, oops, I'm 2 pages over, sorry. After Jacob returned from Paddan Aram, God appeared to him and said, and blessed him. Whoops. There, that was the blessing thing. He gave him the blessing. And God said to him, your name is Jacob, and now you will no longer be called Jacob. You'll be called Israel. Remember, that's the thing they just had. So now you're getting more detail, right? Here's the detail that counts. And God said to him, I'm God Almighty. Do you remember before he says, why do you ask me my name? He answered him. He said, I'm God Almighty. Y'all, this matters. When God gives you his name, it makes all the difference. I have Jehovah's Witness friends who think that Jesus is not God because he's the Son of God, and that he's mighty, but he's not almighty. In Revelation chapter 1, verse 7 and 8, and verses 17 and 18, God gives a direct correlation that he is the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, God Almighty. God Almighty. God Almighty. That is his name. And they're like, yes, that's his name. And then in verse 17 and 18, he says, and I am the first and the last, and I was dead, but now I'm alive forevermore. Wait, when did God die? Is the question that I ask my Jehovah's Witness friends. They're like, well, he didn't, but Jesus did. I'm like, God Almighty. Jesus is God Almighty, the first and the last, the Alpha and Omega, and he died and came back to life, and now he holds the keys, right? They're like, the fact that God tells you his name is important. So here he finally does tell him his name, and he tells them to be fruitful and to and increase in number, and the land that he gave to Abraham and Isaac, he gives to him. And you're thinking, wait, what's that? That's that blessing. Then God went up from him at the place where he talked to him. Jacob set up a stone pillar where he talked to God. He put a drink offering on it. He poured oil on it. And Jacob called the place where God had talked to him Bethel. Remember, we already talked about this. What's Bethel? Bethel means house of God. My name is Beth. It means house of God.